And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports podcast. Yes, we are recording on a Monday because it is Thanksgiving, and also, Carlos, we cover the Rowdies. We had a show planned for tonight. That's been thrown out the window because there is a huge, big old deal of Rowdies news going on, and apparently everyone online is losing their minds. So we thought that we needed to throw our original plan out, focus on what's happening today that is causing such a stir, and maybe put our own names out there. Maybe see if we can get some of that action online, get some of that interaction online. In fact,
James, the sky is falling. Everything sucks. We are going to get relegated or something. There's not even.
I didn't even realize.
Yeah, there's not even promotion relegation in any of the professional leagues in the United States of America. But we're going down. At least that's what you would think if you've looked at the Facebook comments or the Instagram comments. Leave it up to raise ownership. Let's get rid of seasoned players and bring in young guys. Watching high school and college kids at this point. Need to go get a different coach. People pay to see a legit soccer team, not a developmental squad. Sad to see all these guys go. Wow! Exclamation mark. I mean, there's so much going on here. Rowdies need to get far, far away from the Rays. I see where that Rays kind of PTSD would come from, by the way. If you keep up with the Rays, I'm sure you've always been surrounded by this nightmare of never re-signing your star players. Just to get that out of the way. I don't think that's necessarily the case with the Rowdies, by the way. We can talk about this in just a little bit, but it's a good time right now on the Facebook and Instagram comment section in particular. The Twitter is kind of quiet, which seems to be the case when it comes to these kind of things. Twitter seems to be somewhat more on the calm side, but
shockingly.
If you're bored, go take a look at some of these comments. It's really interesting. If you're feeling a bit positive, go throw in some positive comments of your own. Maybe let's balance out the chaos that is these comment sections. James, I'll spoil what my thoughts are. I think everything's going to be okay. We can talk about why here in just a little bit. But all that being said, if you think I'm an idiot, feel free to let me know. We're live on this Monday night, James, like you said. Because of these bits of news, it's worth talking about. Again, off-season time is fun and not fun. We get to learn who's coming back. We get to learn who's leaving. So might as well be timely with it and get on it now before it becomes old news in a couple days. James, before we talk about any of this, there's a lot to talk about. A lot of guys not coming back already. A lot of guys staying around too, by the way. It's not all doom and gloom. Before we do any of that, how is it going down there in beautiful Tampa Bay?
It's actually pretty nice outside for me. I prefer the weather that we're having right now. People like my wife do not, so there is that struggle, but I'm enjoying it. It's finally nice enough for me to go and play soccer outside and enjoy myself at the same time. So I'm taking that in stride. But that's not what we're here to talk about. As much as I would love to go into all the ins and outs of my adult league and tell you who I like, who I don't like, all that stuff, we're going to talk about the Rowdies. We're going to talk about the major news that came out today, and we will postpone part 2 of our season review probably to next week. And I assume that will actually be better because it'll be after Thanksgiving anyway. But before we move on into the Rowdy stuff, I do also want to say congratulations to the Colorado Springs Switchbacks, our USL Championship champions, I suppose, or USL Championship final winners. That's also true. They beat Rhode Island FC. First goal in their 3-0 win, scored, by the way, Juan Tejada. Pretty good there. Carlos, that means that you win the tiebreaker for the whole season. You will get an award, which we have not quite decided which one yet. There have been a couple submissions. RBLR is going to have to foot something for you as a reward, and then Eureka will be on the other end getting a penalty, which might be hot wings, but there are some other submissions as well. We haven't decided. There's still time. I feel like we should do a show about what that one is going to be, and then we'll put that, whatever video it turns into, we'll put that up online. Yeah. So
I'm envisioning a world where we hop on one of these recording sessions. We're talking about some off-season content, maybe a player wish list in a few weeks. I'm eating a lovely wing dinner with a sauce of my choosing, and Eureka is quietly in another box, not
Just
quietly, crying because of the spiciest wings possible are being presented to him. I think that would be a great time. I'm submitting that as my official proposal as the winner. Oh my goodness, of this incredible, thrilling prediction title race we've had going on all season. By the way, we are terrible at this.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
I almost exclusively predicted like wins for the Rowdies, and it wasn't a great strategy. But apparently, James is ever so slightly worse than I am. So there we go. Shout out to the Colorado Switchbacks for putting me over the line, and my boy Aiden Rocha getting it done at right back, repping Georgetown in the USL Championship. It's been fun to watch him kind of move from the central midfield to playing that more fullback role he's been doing recently. He's been doing well at it, so maybe he sticks with that position for the rest of his young career. Yeah, James, it was a good game. I don't know if you got to see most of it. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit more later on. Good game for Colorado. It was entertaining to watch because, again, a couple guys I really like on that team had a great game, and they came out with a lovely result. Good for Colorado Springs, man. It's a packed stadium, which it should be for a final, obviously.
Yeah.
Looks like they have a good thing going culture-wise over there, so that's really cool for them and for obviously the rest of the USL.
I agree, and also want to say quickly congratulations to Rhode Island. They did lose, but to make it to the final in your literal first season as a professional club, that's pretty good. I will give that to them. They handled themselves pretty well. So we'll probably see more of them in the future anyway. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube, any major podcast platform, and of course follow us on social media where you can give us suggestions for Carlos's award and Eureka's penalty for our predictions game. Let's get into the roster news and talk about how we feel about that. All right, so I'll go through the list of the players who are certain to be leaving, and then Carlos, you can take the current team, and we'll just jump in after that. So the Rowdies have made those first moves of the offseason, letting go of Ben Bender and Damian Rivera. They were only here on loan, so they are going back to their parent clubs, obviously. Phil Breno, Zane Bubb, Jordan Doherty, Cal Jennings, Freddie Kleeman, Eddie Manjoma, and Josh Perez have also gone. I can give you a little bit more detail on that. They have specifically declined contract options for Phil Breno, Zane Bubb, Forrest Lasso, and Eddie Manjoma, although Eddie Manjoma was not necessarily listed as somebody who would not return to the club. So I don't know if that means that he is out permanently or not. He obviously did suffer the ACL injury, so keep that in mind. He would probably only be available again in May. And and they also declined the contract option for Josh Perez. And it says here, however, the club is undergoing contract negotiations with Forrest Lasso. I should have finished the sentence. Midfielder Jordan Doherty, forward Cal Jennings, and defender Freddie Kleeman are all out of contract and will not return to the club. So those are the big moves, obviously. That is some big stuff. And we're going to get into several of those names in a lot more detail. But Carlos, let's go through what the current roster actually includes.
Yeah, we knew a couple of these guys were coming back already. I think from last week, Rowdies put out a couple bits and pieces of folks coming back. I believe it was just Leo Fernandez and Lewis Hilton that we knew about before this week. Other than that, Aaron Guillen's coming back. Big piece on the back line. Blake Bodley is back. Crisostomo, Leo Fernandez, Nick Moon, Pacific Nyangabire, Nate Worth, Manu Arteaga, one of our obviously biggest attacking presence, biggest pieces in our attack up top. Andrew Mustali, the kid, and obviously Christian Ortiz, another youngin from the Tampa Bay area. So interesting, by the way, that we are keeping all three of our youngest players around professionally for another year at least. Makes sense to me the more I think about it. I mean, obviously you have your young guys, you want to invest in them, give them some playing time, give them some time to develop. And in a perfect world, you sell them for $30 million to some European team. Maybe we'll get slightly less for some of these kids, but obviously plenty of potential with these guys. So if nothing else, great for them to still be on this roster, continue to contribute meaningful minutes, particularly Nate Worth. And then for the other two, Mustali and Ortiz, I think we'll get more and more meaningful minutes out of them as the season goes on. But obviously, we shouldn't be surprised if we go out and sign a more experienced striker to pair up with Arteaga and have Ortiz and Mustali behind them. James, these are the guys we know are coming back. Again, Lewis Hilton as well, who we didn't have mentioned on our list, but again, we knew he's coming back from last week as well. So we can talk about some of this in a minute. I'm more curious to get your thoughts, James, on the players heading out. I have my own thoughts on who's staying around, generally pretty positive thoughts. I'll give you a spoiler. But let's talk about some of these guys who the Rowdies will not be seeing next year. And again, we'll caveat this by saying Forrest Lasso was declined an option, but they're in a current negotiation with him. That's what was on the Rowdies press release in the article they put out on the website. So that's the only player we know for sure out of these folks that are leaving the club or not on a new contract right now. Only player we know who is still in an active negotiation. So all that being said, keep in mind Forrest Lasso is not a current member of this team for next year, but they could be the case in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Who knows how long this could take. But let's talk about the guys that we know for sure are not coming back. Again, you mentioned Bender, Brano, Bub, Jordan Doherty, Cal, probably the bigger one in there with Jordan Doherty, Kleeman, Majoma, Josh Perez, Damian Rivera. So a couple of those guys were here on loan. They're heading back to their parent clubs. Nothing surprising there. I was hoping we could get maybe another year out of Damian Rivera, but with how well he played, I'm not surprised that New England maybe wants him to get more of a role with them up there. Ben Bender, don't really know his situation. Didn't have a ton of great minutes with us, but he's back in Charlotte for now. Who knows? Maybe he comes back and they said, screw it. I don't know. We'll send you back on loan. James, give us some thoughts, your initial overall thoughts on some of these other names. What's the first thing that sticks out to you? How are you feeling? Give us 30,000 feet altitude review of how you're feeling about these players heading out this year.
Well, just based on appearances alone, the biggest players for us to be losing, obviously, Jordan Doherty, Cal Jennings. They were at the highest levels of this team. And then I think there's probably a second tier within this list that includes Freddie Kleeman, Eddie Manjoma, and Josh Perez. Damian Rivera would be, but he was only on loan. So he was not somebody that we expected necessarily to come back. We wanted it, just as Carlos said, but probably didn't expect it. So, yeah, those are the interesting ones. Phil Breno and Zane Bubb. I think that Phil Breno only made one appearance or maybe two all season because when he actually got into the team, he unfortunately suffered a concussion as well. So he didn't get to complete the end of the season like he was on track to do. And then Zane Bubb, it was his rookie year. He got a couple of appearances. He wasn't trusted too much, it seems, by the coaching staff, even when we were relatively low on fitness at the back. So I guess that probably says it all for Zane Bubb. But yeah, I think the two biggest names that stand out immediately, just like you can see online, Jordan Doherty and Cal Jennings. Jordan Doherty, I think, is probably one of the better defensive players in the USL Championship, especially considering his age. We don't know what his plans are, possibly to go to MLS. He's obviously originally from Ireland. Maybe he wants to go somewhere closer to home. There have been a couple of players who have made the jump from the USL Championship over to European clubs recently, including Milan Iloski, who's playing in the Danish top division. There is Dan Casey, previously of Sacramento Republic. He's playing in the Scottish First Division because the Scottish First Division is mostly terrible. I say that as someone who is a big fan of one of those teams.
Respect Motherwell. Respect Motherwell. Come on.
But yeah, there are a couple of other examples, and obviously Nick Markanich is going over to the Spanish Second Division probably after Thanksgiving, if I had to guess. But yeah, those are the examples that they have to look out for. Cal Jennings, probably based off of the season that he had, I would imagine that he's going to want to give himself another shot at the top flight. He played in MLS a couple of times here and there with LAFC before going on loan and then ultimately joining the Tampa Bay Rowdies 2 seasons ago. And he might as well try again in MLS, or I don't know, maybe go to Europe. I think that our producer Eureka pointed this out over the course of this season. There was some crazy rumor that Cal Jennings was linked with the Indian top flight, which is not the strongest league, I will say, but maybe there's some good money there depending on which team you go to. I think that there is a Manchester City owned club over there, so who knows? It would be an interesting move for sure. But yeah, those are the two players that stand out for me. And like I said, Jordan Doherty is probably one of the better defensive options in this league overall, age especially. The problem is, of course, it is very difficult to keep players at a club in the American Second Division specifically over the long term. We have been very lucky in the players that we've been able to do that with. Actually, Lewis Hilton, Leo Fernandez, Sebastian Guenzati before them, a couple of others that names are escaping me. I mean, Forrest Lasso even is one of those, but it's not usually the case that players stick at one team in the American Second Division for a long, long time. There are money constraints because these teams are not working with the same kinds of budgets that you're going to get in the MLS level or maybe even a Liga MX level in Mexico. And so eventually you're going to have to shuffle around your salary. If a player keeps scoring double-digit goals, like Cal Jennings has done, then they're going to be saying, hey, I want more money. And as much as the Rowdies are, I will say, because we're going to get into this, I'm sure, I think the Rowdies are one of the better financially supported clubs in the USL Championship. Gonna put that out there right now. That being said, yes, exactly. That's true. That being said, do they have the money to continue to pay, for Cal Jennings, who has hit at least 15 goals in the last 2 seasons? He's hitting his peak age-wise. There's some economics involved in this that probably the Tampa Bay Rowdies front office said, we would love to keep you. Can we keep paying you this? And this is all speculation, by the way. I do not know any of this. But Cal Jennings might have looked at the offer and said, if I'm going to get paid this much, maybe I should at least try to go to a top flight somewhere else. So I don't know. That's all speculation. And I understand it. From a player perspective, you always want to challenge yourself to get to the highest level that you can play at. And that's probably the case with Jordan Doherty too. I think that they both have a higher ceiling than the USL Championship, whether that's with us or any other team in this league. But I think that those are going to be two of our biggest misses as well because of their ceiling. And at the same time, I do want to say that probably means that we were on borrowed time, keeping them around. So that's my take on it. I think that Freddie Kleeman at the back is a good depth piece. Maybe they didn't want him as a depth piece for the salary that he was on. I don't know what the salary he was on was. And maybe they would like someone who's a better depth piece. I thought Eddie Manjoma was a particularly good depth piece because of his versatility. Yeah. Maybe that was not, maybe the option there just wasn't working out. And Josh Perez really had a very good season for us this year. So I'm a little more surprised actually by that one. He was a late pickup, or not a late pickup the year before. And then this past season, he actually became a starter and did very well. I think that he and Danny Crisostomo, along with everybody, started to dip through the summer months and then especially in August and afterwards. So that was disappointing. But he and Danny Crisostomo played opposite roles on the left and the right side. I thought they did really well, especially in the beginning part of the season. Those are all my takes right now. I think that Josh Perez, as much as I did appreciate what he did for us this season, in the most cynical and the most basic money business terms that I don't even know what the actual money terms for these deals are, Josh Perez might be a replaceable player within that role. And maybe that's what they're thinking. Who's to say? I don't know. Danny Crisostomo has been kept, although I think that he was already on a 2-year contract previously. So those are all the things that immediately come to mind to me. Carlos, I've been talking a while. I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll let you take up as much time as you want to now that I have filled my whole room with air.
I'll give you $5 million if you match my sicko level right now. You mentioned Kyle Jennings potentially, speculatively, in a different universe being linked to the Indian top flight. Can you name the Rowdies player I'm thinking of who is currently signed to an Indian professional soccer club right now? Former Rowdy within the last 5 years.
Ooh, this is a good one. I want to say that this is an English player.
No.
Oh, well, I'm already out. Okay.
Yeah. Swing and a miss.
All right. No, I don't got it.
Pape Diakite is currently in the Indian Super League, I believe it's called. Hold on.
Is he
Let me
really?
fact check myself.
Wow.
He's played 4 games with a team whose name I'm forgetting. But yeah, I just wanted to prove that I'm a true Rowdy sicko by remembering this Super League Kerala club Calicut FC in the Indian top flight. They were just founded this year in
All
2024,
right.
and they play in a 50,000 person stadium. Anyway, if you're really interested in the Indian Super League, there's a former Rowdy over there. Go check it out, I guess. Anyway, all that being said, I felt like I needed to prove myself and make sure someone heard that I remember that before I forget that I remember that in the back of my head. Diakite, shout out Diakite, love that guy. He was a great defender in his short time with us, by the way. I miss him. He's a really good presence. Okay, if we're looking to get another defender, he's over there. He's only played 4 games with them, so maybe we snag him too.
Yeah.
But we'll save the wish list for another time. Plenty of former Rowdies out there that could, in my imaginary world, make their return. In the real world of who we know is actually leaving, again, I put it out on Twitter. I think for me, the biggest loss here is Jordan Doherty. I obviously think it's between Cal and him, and I think that's pretty debatable. I could see an argument for Cal Jennings, obviously. In my attacking loving mind, Cal Jennings is probably my biggest miss. He scored so many goals. He was exciting to watch, right? I mean, he's the pinnacle of like just a get after the ball and see what you can do kind of player.
Yeah.
He was good at it. He just chased balls down and scored goals. But it's also not like a sustainable game plan. And I think we saw the flaws of that, right? The flaws of kind of just boot it up to Cal and see what happens. We saw that it wasn't sustainable, right? He had started off really hot, wasn't really scoring much for an extended period of time, found his rhythm again towards the end of the season into the playoffs. He's a really streaky player in a good way. I mean, he can score goals in bunches, but I think in terms of consistency, just solid player. The biggest guy we're going to miss here is Jordan Doherty. On top of the fact that he's just a great defender, he's also a great defensive midfielder. When he had to, he could play like at the fullback spot if we were playing with 4 guys. Like this was a really big utility player, and he did all of them really well. He found his home in that back line of 3. And I think he was really good at it, obviously, because he kept playing in that spot. He played a ton of games this year with us. And I'm really glad he was able to make a return to the Rowdies after a brief season overseas in Ireland, I believe it was. Yeah, but again, he's a guy who's still very young. He's demonstrated incredible potential. He's still, not at his peak, I don't think. I think he still has room to grow in a really good way. That's a good thing for a player of his age. He's kind of close to his peak. He's got opportunities somewhere else. I think to your point, by the way, of the Rowdies being one of the more financially supported, financially stable clubs in this league, I think you can kind of think about that in this way that I hope brings a bit of calm to the Rowdies fan base. If you think back in the last 5 years, let's say 5 years, right? There's not a lot of like Rowdies stars per se that we don't re-sign, that we don't let go, or a lot of Rowdy stars that if they do leave, it's rare that we see them go to another USL team and just do insane over there, if that makes any sense, right? So I think the one exception is JJ Williams this season, who's gotten very hot towards the end of the year. I think that was one I really missed last season. I would have loved to have him back on this squad. I think he would have done numbers with another season with Cal Jennings, or even an Arteaga and him up top would have been really interesting to see. Long story short, there's not a ton of guys who do really well here that go to another USL team and do the same thing, right? Not that I don't wish the best of success to anybody who leaves his club and goes to another USL team, right? But look at Sebastian Guanzati, right? He was a legend on this club, scored a ton of goals. He's one of my favorite Rowdies players of all time. But he was getting to a point where maybe what we were going to pay him was not really enough for what we would get in return in terms of on-field performance. We saw that with Indy. He was a bit injury prone this year with Indy. But when he was in the game, didn't produce a ton offensively. Again, fantastic player, somewhat on the back end of his career at this point, right? You think of anybody else who we've let go, not really a ton of players who have like gone off to other USL teams and done incredibly well. Again, I'm not saying it's kind of cynical. Like I wish them the best, right? But in a lot of cases, we let players go and they go off to other opportunities somewhere else, right? All that's to say, I don't think we have to worry a ton about any of these folks who are leaving being capable of like MVP numbers at another team who will compete with us directly for a title, if that makes any sense.
I agree with that entirely.
Yeah. So I like that's all to say. This front office has proven themselves pretty capable over the last several years in terms of finding players who are good and then finding them to be a great fit in whatever system we've been working with. For a lot of years was Neil Collins' system. Now we're in Robbie Nielsen's era, which is very similar tactically to Neil Collins' era for what I see on the field. So I'm not particularly concerned that we're losing out on like a ton of talent. We are, but again, somewhat cynically, a lot of the talent we're losing, there's players out on the market right now, even the few players off the top of my head that I can think of, that we can go after and replace and in some sense upgrade. That's not to say like we're not going to miss any of these players, but I just I don't see, like, let's say Kyle Jennings, for example, right? Kyle Jennings has in some sense MLS quality. In some sense, there's a world where he ends up at a team in Europe, right? Maybe a lower level first division, country in Europe, or I don't know, first division Scotland, like we talked about, right?
You know where I could see him really thriving? It's just not a thing that happens a lot, but he seems like a player who has the ability to do really well in like the Argentinian league or something like that.
Yeah, right. That would be a bit of a surprise, right? But again, like that's all to say. I just don't see Kyle Jennings like leaving the Rowdies and then going to like Louisville.
No, exactly.
Or like, or even like I don't know, a slightly less competitive, like a Birmingham, right? Like if the Rowdies don't have enough to pay Kyle Jennings, or he's leaving for another reason, it's probably because he wants to look for a better opportunity somewhere else.
An opportunity above this league.
Correct. That's what I'm going for. That's the way I'm putting it, right? So if Kyle Jennings is leaving, I don't see him going to a Hartford, right? A team that, from what I understand, is not financially probably at the same level as the Rowdies. Or again, really any other Eastern Conference team that's been competitive with us for the last several years, Detroit more recently, right? So if we're losing these players, I don't think it's going to hurt us in terms of like our competition in this league picking them up. What we're losing is like these players like being on our clubs and helping our club and helping our mission in this league. Sure. Like again, we're losing them, of course, but I'm not concerned about them going off to a rival and doing anything over there. That was a long-winded way of me trying to calm down the Rowdies chaos on Facebook and Instagram. I think the next point is that there's just so much turnover in this league, right? That again, being the club we are, and I think it's a pretty attractive place to be, Tampa Bay, right? And having, the success in finding good players and bringing in, top-notch players for the last couple of years, I don't see a world where we don't do that this season, right? I know it's a different era in terms of Robbie Nielsen kind of trusting the young guys a lot more, right? And you can have your thoughts on that. I know there's some like, mixed feelings about it. I think generally it's a pretty good thing. But it doesn't mean the Rowdies are going to move away from like, it's not going to be like a U20 team like I saw on Facebook earlier today, right? It's not.
Jeez.
Like we're not going to be a college team, if that makes any sense. Arteaga is on this team, right? Like just from the guys we know, and I know we're mostly talking about the guys that are leaving, but just from the guys we know for a fact are coming back as of now, right? Arteaga, Lewis Hilton, Leo Fernandez. On the wings, you have guys that were really good last year, and the guy Nick Moon, right, who has been injured a lot, and he's really good, so he's going to be back in full potential. Nick Moon, Blake Bodley, Pacific Youngabire, who I still think has a lot to give in terms of potential. But we're going to have Blake Bodley and Nick Moon back, that dynamic duo in the wingback spot that we heard so much about from San Diego, right? Like, there's already still a ton of veteran experience on this team. Obviously, you need to go out and grab a couple defenders, sign a pretty good goalie, and go out and get another veteran forward. Other than that, you're about set. You know what I mean? And this is about as good as it gets for a USL team. And I don't think we should take that for granted, all things considered, right? We're almost set in the midfield in terms of our starters, which is incredible to be able to say as a second division team in a world where this league sees so much turnover from a player's perspective, but also from like a club's existential existence, right? Perspective.
We've seen that. God.
Yeah. So take everything with a grain of salt and just put it into perspective, because we are very fortunate to be able to say that our midfield is almost entirely set. Aaron Guillen, who maybe didn't have his best season last year, but who is an incredible defender of the top caliber in this league, is back with this team for next year. Forrest Lasso is in the negotiations for next year. He still has a ton to give. He's one of the best in this league still. A couple seasons removed from his MVP seasons, right? Or from his Defender of the Year seasons. And I'm looking at the forwards again. Manu Arteaga, still one of the better forwards in this league. We have enough money, I think, to go out and get another veteran forward, but we really are adding depth in the midfield, some starters in the back line and the goalie, obviously, and then maybe one more starter caliber player up top. And the rest is depth. And that's, I think, a really good place to be. So I'm going to miss all these guys leaving, right? And I think there was a lot to give in a guy like Zane Bubb too. Like, we didn't see much of him, but I thought he was very good in his few minutes that he did play. I would have loved to keep him around, see what he could do as a starter potentially. I love Breno as a player, as a person. Like, he was incredible. He had some great moments with this team. I thought there was a world where he might be a starter on this team. But again, I think the Rowdies are truly looking for a more proven veteran starting goalie. That's what we've always done.
Yeah.
The Rowdies have not been a team that's bet on a young, unproven keeper to take the starting role, really, since I've been watching this team, right? And it started with Matt Pickens, who was when I started really paying attention to this club. Matt Pickens, who was a proven defender, right? The beard and everything. Then you went to, I don't remember the exact order, but John McCarthy was here, right? You had Evan Loro. Goodness, I'm forgetting like a couple of the really big ones, and I'm sure everybody will be mad at me for forgetting them. But you know what I'm saying? All the guys who we remember at the goalie spot, proven guys, not like super young guys. So, like, this club has a proven track record of getting the veteran players where they need to, and then finding the right depth everywhere else. So, all that being said, gonna miss these guys. Missing Damian Rivera in particular, because I felt like he would have been such a great Rowdy if we could get him a permanent contract. But he honestly deserves to be starting somewhere. Maybe it's in another USL team. I think this is a guy that might be at another USL team and getting really, really good minutes as a starter somewhere. If he goes out on loan from his parent club. These other guys, frankly, Jordan Doherty, I don't think will be in the USL next year. Cal, I don't think will be in the USL next year. No. The rest, I'm not really particularly concerned about being like massive threats to us in the USL next year if they stick around. So again, with all due respect, like, that's not, I wish them all the best, but I'm not particularly concerned, right? I did my soliloquy there, James. That was my monologue to give everyone some context on where I'm at. Again, if you're listening live, give us your thoughts. Tell me where I'm wrong. But this club has been pretty good at keeping the guys we need to. And truly, I think we're still blessed with the core we're able to say we have confirmed for next year. All that being said, JJ Williams was a guy that we had re-signed at this point last year.
Yeah, you're right about
remember that. And then a month later, we saw that he dipped to Rhode Island. So I guess nothing's, ever written in stone, but it feels like a pretty good place that we're in right now. I don't see a world where a guy has a JJ Williams type of season next year being a Rowdy the past year, if that makes any sense. But again, best of luck to all these guys wherever they go. Cal and Jordan Doherty do not seem like players that will be in this league next year. So best of luck, especially to them wherever they go. Big things for guys like Damian Rivera, though. Young player still, and he just has so much potential. So I hope he particularly does well wherever he goes. James, that's my monologue. I hope my silly fans perspective, optimist mindset resonates with at least someone out there, and we can kind of cut back on these like insanely like existential comments on social media. The team's not folding. We're not getting relegated next year because we can't, first of all. But even if we could, there's not a world where that happens, truly. I mean, the team we have already is better than most of the Western Conference,
Yeah.
frankly. And also
better than Las Vegas for 95% of their history.
Yeah, like we already we're in the upper echelon of teams just with who we have coming back next season. So should we talk a little bit about the guys coming back next season, James? Do we have anything else to add about the guys leaving? I mean, I think there's a lot to talk about in terms of tributes for these guys. Like a lot of these guys have done a ton for this team. In particular, Jordan Doherty has had a pretty long history, medium-term history with this team. He reached 100 games, or am I making that up? I don't know if he did.
We just talked about this. How am I already forgetting? I forget, but we did just talk about this. So
he might have gone to 100 games. I'm looking it up right now on another tab, but either way, if he wasn't, he was close. And either way, guy with plenty of matches for this club. So he was at 100 games. Yeah, Jordan Doherty got to 100 games. Another guys gave as much as they could in shorter amounts of time. So respect to all these guys. Joshua Perez was a huge revelation for me this year.
Yep.
And by the way, everybody should remember that his uncle was a former Rowdy back in the OG Rowdies days. So always Rowdy's blood in him. So best of luck to these guys wherever they go, truly. But I'm very, very excited just in the little bit of peace I have knowing who's coming back next year. And you should be too, truly. We have the core, and now we have money and space to build on what we had last season.
You got to think about that too. Not to cut you off there, Carlos, but
please take over.
There is the concern. So we have mentioned that the Rowdies probably do have one of the better budgets in the USL Championship, but you still have a budget, and you still have to consider what players are making on that. And Cal Jennings, again, 15 goals at least 2 seasons in a row, if not more. I forget what he did the year before. That's a big slice of money that suddenly we have available. Probably the biggest slices of money left are going to be your Lewis Hilton, Leo Fernandez, Aaron Guillen, Forrest Lasso. But at the same time, the other side of this is that a good portion of our roster is going to be younger players. This is going to be their first contract. It's not going to be as much money, and that money then can be put towards the higher end players who are going to be the game in, game out starters, assumedly. And even if they aren't, if whoever said this was right, and we have a full U20 team next year, minus the players that we currently have, there are a lot of really good U20 players that we could fill. Don't forget about Fidel Barajas at Charleston. Don't forget about Diego Luna at El Paso before he moved to RSL. So there are plenty of players that we could fill, both the high end and the low end. I think that there's a lot of good out there.
To that point, though, right? I think the Rowdies understand. I would hope they understand. Okay, look at the last couple of years, right? Even in the Neil Collins era, we started adding in younger and younger players as the seasons progressed, right?
Like Tate Johnson,
right? And I'm not even talking about like academy kids either, right? But you think about the low 20s guys, right? Just a lot of younger guys making their way onto the Neil Collins teams, and that was by design. Like this league as a whole has gotten quicker, physical, more faster. Oh my goodness. Quicker and faster, obviously, more physical, and overall younger, right? In some sense, you have to keep up with that pace of play. You bring in all these veterans, it's going to be a slower team. So you need to find that good balance. I don't think the Rowdies are going to abandon this approach they've had over the last several years now. It's not just Robbie Nielsen, right? We've seen it a bit more concretely by signing literal 18-year-olds to professional contracts, 3 of them, right? We've seen that more concretely now, obviously. But we've been trending this way for a while, and we've still been mixing in veteran players in the meantime. So again, like, just to mention, we still have former MVP Leo Fernandez on this team, right? We still have incredible goal scoring talent in Manuel Arteaga on this team. And you have a guy who plays, I think, kind of similarly from the tape I've seen on him, and Endry Mustali, physical forward who moves pretty well for his size, learning under him. That's great. That's fantastic for us. Keep mixing in this talent, this young talent, with veteran talent who can kind of, in some sense, show them the ropes. And I think we're in business, and we're in business for a while, right? On the other hand, if you have a bunch of really, really good young players, the tough thing about this league is that they won't stick around very long.
Exactly.
It's just the nature of it, right? The 2 guys you mentioned, right? Barajas is wherever he is now. I'm forgetting.
Mexico.
Yeah, and Luna is, like you said, at Real Salt Lake. After very, very short time with, where was he?
El Paso.
El Paso, exactly. So, all that being said, I love the young talent as well. I think we can't rely a ton on like young superstars because it's not sustainable for being competitive in this league. So, I really like how we've approached this in the past couple of years. I like how we approached it this year with the amount of young players we have on full-time contracts, not just academy contracts. I think we're finding a good balance, truly. If you think about how many players are on a Rowdies roster in the past several years, going into like the old NASL days, who never really touched the field. Even this year, you had our center midfielder who went to Miami, whose name I'm blanking on right now because he played a single game. What was the name, James?
Joey Desart?
Joey Desart, yeah. There's a lot of players who've been on these rosters that just don't touch the field. We might as well give those spots to young players that will be able to contribute in the future. And I think we found a really, really good balance so far. Now it's a matter of freeing up the money, like you mentioned, Cal Jennings will do, right? You free up the money, you go out and you get another superstar to replace him. We're fine. Like, we're literally fine. And there's going to be so much turnover in the USL rosters, like there always is.
Yeah.
And we're primed to be the Dodgers of this league, right? To go in and sweep up, a star who just isn't getting paid what he should be at his club currently. So we're in business.
Also, we are probably primed to go and sweep up a couple of players who are in MLS right now and out of contract there. And to that end, we just got note from producer Eureka. Very quick draw, Eureka here. But there are 5 players out of contract with New England Revolution at the end of 2024. Defender Nick Lima, defender Tim Parker, forward Damian Rivera, defender Ryan Spalding, and forward Bobby Wood. So, folks,
Bobby Wood.
Yes, Bobby Wood. Just keep that in mind as we move forward. The sky is not falling. There's a lot of good stuff out there. And Eureka is spending a lot of time finding them, apparently.
Yeah.
He needs to start emailing the team.
There's not a world where you can convince me that Bobby Wood would not be an elite USL striker next year.
I think he would.
Like, that is kind of the pinnacle of what I'm talking about, right? When I'm saying we have like the money to be able to go get a superstar, quote unquote, for the USL, right? Keep in context, like, what this league is very important. Keeping that context in mind is very important. Bobby Wood does not still have like a ton to give at the top levels in soccer. He would be almost exactly what I'm looking for in a Tampa Bay Rowdy right now, right? Proven forward, score lots of goals, still seems to have enough to give, right? Like, he's not at the end of his career. And I'm sure a guy like Endry Mustali and Christian Ortiz can learn a lot from him in the process, by the way. So I think there's a role for a guy like him on this Rowdy squad. Obviously, I would welcome.
Let's get the flying Hawaiian in.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you mentioned Damian Rivera. mentioned Damian Rivera. I don't really know the nuances of how these contract negotiations go. I would love to one day be in the rooms where these happen. It's like a dream job. So maybe I'll be more like, versed in how these things work in the future. We said we're letting go of Damian Rivera, but I don't know if he's returning to his parent club, quote unquote, but now we know that he's not staying in New England next year. Maybe that was just a formality to potentially bring him back. I don't know. I truly don't. Like, this is all speculation. It's kind of like a wish list situation, right? You mentioned Ryan Spalding not being on contract for New England next year. He's pretty familiar with the team down here, obviously. Yes. And he clearly wasn't happy with the way things went when he got recalled this year, and how that New England Revolution 2 situation went. So all that being said, there's so many situations like New England. I think New England's kind of unique because they're so poorly run. But like you said, MLS players out there as well who, for whatever reason, just can't seem to find their footing on their teams. Not because they're not great players, but like Ryan Spalding's situation. Again, like, he should be getting minutes with that MLS team, right? And just didn't really seem to find his footing for whatever reason. So, yeah, you're right. I didn't really consider that too much. I was thinking about other USL talent to scoop up, but there's room to take players from Major League Soccer as well. I've always said, like, we're missing out on so much talent by not like going directly into South America and pulling young talent out of there.
Big time. Big time.
Yeah. Yeah. Young talent that is immediately ready to contribute. There's a learning curve with, the new language, right? With the new culture, being in Florida and everything. But I mean, these are kids that maybe aren't primed to go to Europe, right? But are ready to try a new challenge, get out of Argentina, get out of Colombia, right? Get out of Ecuador, right? There's so much talent out of Ecuador right now. Yep. Out of Independiente del Valle's academy, just really, really, really good players that need a shot to get a bigger platform, which frankly, I think the USL has a bigger platform than a lot of top division Ecuadorian teams. Like, there's so much talent to be grabbed over there. I'm not sure if the Rowdies are willing to invest in that like level of scouting and infrastructure to go down there and make those deals happen. But it's a great investment too. And I'm looking forward to the day when that actually happens. I think we will make those moves happen one day. I don't know if it'll be this season, but there's so many opportunities to go get really good players ready to contribute right now, sell them for $5 million to a European team sometime down the road. Like, there's a lot of ways for that to happen. And I'm always manifesting that every offseason because I think it's always a great time to do it. It's going to take a little bit of investment in infrastructure and the scouting network to go down there and make that happen. But I mean, let's go to Scotland too. I'm sure the Scottish, like, young Scotland players with our our Neil Collins and our Robbie Nielsen connections over there, to go snag a couple young kids that aren't making it over there, but are ready to make an impact here. And I say young kids, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. Like, there's good talent everywhere, and that's all to say we're going to be okay. That's all to say that we're going to be fine. So, oh my God, that was a great monologue. I feel relieved myself just being able to put that out there. You guys should try making a podcast. It's better than therapy. You can just rant for an hour and nobody tells you what to do except Eureka, who pays us. And it's in our contracts that we keep it somewhat within reason, I guess. But James, anything else to add here? I think I put out everything I can into the universe to make it a successful off season and hopefully calm down anybody who's freaking out about what seems like the end of the world.
No, just the disrespect for Kevin Rodriguez, who went from the Ecuadorian second division to playing in Europe. So that's the only thing that I wanted to throw.
He was on the second division team still in Ecuador playing at the World Cup. Like, there's so much talent like that. I use Ecuador as an example because obviously, like, I'm more intimately familiar with the soccer world over there. Like, there's so many young players I can think of just from like Independiente's system who's on their juniors team. They cannot be getting paid very much over there. Like, Independiente has a little bit of money, they're not getting paid much over there. Money is not the obstacle. I think it's just making that leap and taking a risk, right? And frankly, I don't think these are high risk investments because of the money situation.
Yeah.
Like we can go down there, pay a player a decent amount of money, tell one of these clubs we're willing to give you X amount of money and try to make it happen. We can try to make it happen. So let's see what we can do, James. There's a lot to make. There's a lot of opportunities out there. The world is our oyster. We're rich in my mind. And maybe relatively rich in terms of the USL. So yeah, let's make it happen.
Yep, absolutely. And thank you, Harry Austin, for the comment. We appreciate that. I'm glad that even from San Antonio, we have some people listening. That's pretty cool. Carlos, we have taken up a lot of time on this because I think just like we said when we started this, it's a giant topic of discussion on the forums, I guess. So
big chunk of players
take up a lot of time. But we do have one other big piece of news within the USL Championship to cover, and it is related to Florida, even if it's not for the Rowdies. So very quickly here, there are major changes coming for the Miami FC down in South Florida. A company called Sports Performance Hub, I guess they go by SPH, kind of reminds me of IMG, and the plans do as well. They now own a future Homestead side. So Homestead, Florida, they plan to build a 10K seater stadium on this campus that they're building that they just got a 99-year lease, no bid lease on from the county, from Miami-Dade County. And I just want to shout out Joseph Treviso, who posted this to Beyond the 90 Substack that covers Floridian soccer. Please follow that. I'm not trying to send you to all the other places around the internet, but that aren't us. But at the same time, he is the person who did all the reporting on this. So I cannot take credit. I need to throw it all to him for going so in depth on this. But yeah, what they have, this site plan that they have posted either on their website or wherever he found it, includes all of this land for what looks to me kind of like an IMG campus, and they're going to have a professional soccer team, and it's going to be Miami FC, except it'll be Homestead. So that's really interesting. I'm happy that they have a lot of investment coming in. That's like legitimately very good for the league. Losing professional teams is bad, and the USL Championship has lost one. The USL League One has lost two. That's not good. At least two of those for me were completely out of the blue. I might have expected it from Central Valley, but the other two I did not know. So let's keep as many teams that already exist in existence. And if that means that they have to go to another version of IMG that happens to be run by several former professional players, including Juan Sebastian Veron, fair enough. I will take that happily. Carlos, what are your thoughts on the Homestead FC?
I don't know. Like I haven't really processed it. I saw this information earlier for the first time. Apparently I was behind because there had been like rumors had been circling in USL circles about this. This was news to me out of nowhere. I'd mentioned in our group chats that this was not the Miami FC announcement I expected to see this offseason.
Right, exactly.
I fully thought that it was going to be over either this year or next year at the latest. Apparently this seems to me to be like they're kind of like I don't know, in some sense like their last stand, to be dramatic, right?
It could be, yeah.
If you're going to make this happen, you need something to get this going. Like you're not finding any success getting crowds at FIU Stadium.
Sorry, Carlos, Pitbull Stadium at FIU's campus.
Pitbull Stadium at Florida National University's campus. You're correct. I'm sorry to Mr. 305. Love your music. One of the GOATs. But you're not getting any success at Pitbull Stadium. I think the stadium will be much more lamely named than Pitbull Stadium, but you need something to kind of get people going to your games and any sort of excitement around the team, which you're not getting because one, your team's terrible, and two, the Miami sports scene, frankly, sucks.
It's awful.
It's terrible, and I know there's like people on this to listen to this pod that are from the area. I love Miami, truly. I really like Miami as a city. I love Miami, the people. I love Miami, but the sports culture in Miami is really bad.
It
Like,
seems as though everyone who lives in Miami already has a team and they do not care about the local team, except obviously that Lionel Messi is there when he's available. And
right.
if he's not, then they might leave.
Yeah. This is, and there's a good question from Harry Austin, by the way, from the YouTube stream. Is it far enough away from Inter Miami to where they can develop a fan base? And this is what I'm getting to here in a second too.
We don't know.
So Homestead is about conservatively an hour south of Miami. I have like family that lives down there. I was in Homestead a lot for a long time in my life, and I love Homestead. It was a small kind of like rural area for a while. In recent years, especially, it's boomed because Miami is just running out of space. People start sprawling out. I think this is about as good a situation as it gets for Miami FC, because this team was not sustainable at Pitbull Stadium. The team sucked. They weren't getting any fans going to their games. Inter Miami, frankly, is going to struggle with attendance as soon as Messi heads out from the club, which is not too far in the near future. They kind of already, in some sense, don't get full stadiums, even when Messi is like not playing the game. Sorry, I said that in the most inefficient way possible. When Messi's not playing, the stadium struggles to fill its seats too, right? Yeah. The sports culture down there is not great, and that's just a reality. And I'm not saying the Tampa sports culture is like on another world either. We struggle for a variety of reasons, including the fact that like 1 billion people who live in the Tampa area are from like New York or somewhere else and care more about their own teams than the local teams. So I'm not saying Tampa's on another level, million years above them or anything, but it's just the reality of Miami sports scene, right? I think if you want something to be anywhere near successful in Miami FC situation, this is about as good as it gets. So that's why I kind of called it their last stand to be dramatic, right? You have a growing population down there in Homestead, very, very Hispanic population in Homestead, which is great in terms of, generating excitement around soccer, obviously.
And hopefully also generating excitement because they are building this whole campus, a potential academy, and then players making it into the first team.
Absolutely. 10,000 people, I think, is hopeful. But I'm not surprised if we're going to get like actual 4,000 person games in Miami again. Like that,
Which would be fantastic.
That would be so good for what they've been in the last several years. Miami FC getting 4,000, 5,000 people even to a game would be awesome for their own like excitement, local community. If this becomes Homestead's team, like truly, I think they have a chance, right? I don't think they have a chance in Miami anymore. It's just the reality of what the Miami sports scene is. It's the reality of Messi being there and Inter Miami being there. If they become Homestead's team, there's a chance for it to happen. It's kind of like, I don't know if this contextualizes it for anybody. It's kind of like if the Rowdies went out to Lakeland because there was like an MLS team here or something. We weren't getting any attendance. It's the Rowdies going to Lakeland, building a stadium over there, and trying to generate excitement over there instead of Tampa. That's about as good as a comparison as I can make for like our local area. Yeah. So I don't know. All that being said, I'm not sure if it'll work. Like I'm still being pretty optimistic, but I think again, everything in perspective, understanding how things have gone in the last several years, it's a pretty good move. And it's about as hopeful as you can be if you're a longtime Miami FC fan. You're gonna have a longer drive to games if for whatever reason you've been going to Miami FC games pretty consistently. I'm not sure.
Well, to be fair, they will have, according to this, they will remain playing home fixtures at Pitbull Stadium at FIU while this is being built. The facility is being built, and then MFC will be able to shift its training operations to SPH, according to Joseph Treviso, and that will likely happen as early as 2026. So we got one more year of Pitbull Stadium, baby.
Okay. I don't know if they'll survive another year. Like, truly, I don't know. But if they can hold out for one more year and build some excitement on there, like put in a lot of like marketing money into the Homestead area, like this is your team. This is Homestead's team, right? Like you can make it happen. Like it's a growing area. People need something to do down there. Like it's pretty far from Miami. If you can make it a
Yeah.
family thing to where the Homestead community really rallies around this team for games, like sure, screw it. We ball. Let's make it happen. I want all the USL teams to do well. I think this is a really interesting move. I'm skeptical that it'll work, truly, but I think there's a world where it does. So I'm wishing them all the best, truly. I want Miami FC to succeed. It would be monumental if they can get 5,000-6,000 people to games. Having Miami FC within an hour of them, right? So good luck to them, truly. I love Homestead too. Great Mexican food down there. My godparents have a little Mexican restaurant down there. If you're ever in the area going to an away game, I have a spot for us to pregame, so we'll be there.
Nice. That's good to know. All right. Keep that in mind for the future, everybody. Last couple things you need to keep in mind. We'll do our extra time segment real quick because we have gone long here, but a lot of good stuff to talk about. The NWSL champions are crowned, and it is Orlando Pride. I am of mixed emotions because I am not a fan of the Orlando franchise. They are all under one umbrella with Orlando City. However, on the other side of things, Marta, if I'm not mistaken, has won the first major trophy of her career because all the other trophies that she's won that I know of are the Copa America tournaments that Brazil have won in the past, where only recently have they even had actual competition from Colombia. So this is the first major trophy of her career. I feel happy that she has won, but otherwise I really don't like Orlando Pride, and I don't like that they won. I also was pulling for the Washington Spirit because Trinity Rodman is probably my favorite player on the women's side. So, Carlos, it appears that you have opinions.
I mean, truly, I haven't really kept up like super closely with NWSL this season. I've become so into like USL Super League over the last couple of weeks because the Rowdies have come to a close. It's been a perfect time to get into the Tampa Bay Sun. If you haven't, shout out the Tampa Bay Sun podcast, by the way. But I've been to a few Spirit games this year, and I really, really love the squad. There's so many like fascinating players on that team. Like you said, Trinity Rodman is one of them. And it's been a really fun team to watch. In the few games I did get to watch, the atmosphere was bumping over there. By the way, they sold out their last 2 playoff games at home. Like they were drawing crowds bigger than DC United on on several days. That's a cool team. It's a really cool team. So unfortunate that they lost. I think they were again, just super talented. So I didn't really know a ton about Orlando Pride, but I figured just from watching the Spirit play, I was like, there's no way any team's beating this squad. Apparently it happened. And I really don't like that it was a team associated with one of my least favorite teams in sports. But it happened. So whatever. Shout out the Spirit. This is still one of my favorite hats like in the world.
A nice hat.
The cherry blossom design, like they really go all in on DC, which has been really cool. DC has seen like a sports culture revival in the last couple of years. So it's really cool to see the Spirit be a part of that, going to games, like hopping on the metro and like seeing last Sunday was their last home playoff game, not this past weekend, the weekend before. I swore I saw, and you know, if you watch football, you know how much excitement there is around the Washington Commanders these days, right? But I saw more, this is anecdotal, obviously, but I saw significantly more Washington Spirit shirts, jerseys, hats, scarves than I did Commander gear on the Metro. I'm not saying like more people are watching the Spirit game or anything, because obviously like the Commanders are so big right now and people are getting really into it. But anecdotally, you see it around the city. Like people really care about the women's soccer team here. I see more gear here for the Spirit than I do DC United, honestly. Again, anecdotal. I don't have the numbers to like back up that more people are watching the Spirit than DC United or any other team in the area, but it's just really cool to see like the culture of women's soccer around here that I'm not sure how present it is in other cities. Maybe Portland, you know, they've always had a great soccer scene. Yeah. But the Spirit, just from a personal anecdote, have been so good at developing like a grassroots, like authentic fan base over here. And it's spiraled across the city. It's really, really cool.
Good. That is actually really awesome to hear. Really, really happy for them. And I'm sure that they will have a good future one way or another.
Yeah.
To stick to the women's side of the game, the U.S. women's national team have 2 games coming up this week, actually. November 30th and December 3rd. They will be playing England and Holland, respectively, in England and Holland, respectively. So that's actually pretty cool. They're going on a tour of the European countries, and they are taking a couple of players, not including Trinity Rodman, because she has run her socks off all season. So they're giving her a break. But that is something that you can do over this Thanksgiving break. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. That was my wonderful segue to say that RBLR wishes everyone the best for the holiday season coming up here. Not only this long weekend, hopefully you have a couple of days off from work, but also coming up in December where it just, I don't even know when we're supposed to work with everything that all the days that we have off. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We appreciate when you do. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, anywhere you are, we are too. At RBLR Sports. I'm mostly still on Twitter at this point, at RBLR James K. You can use the hashtag AskRBLR, or you can get at Carlos. Where? He is saying at Carlos TPA 10.
At Carlos TPA 10 on Twitter. I didn't realize I was muted. I just learned that my second favorite player on the Spirit, Hal Hirschfeld, she was really fun to watch. My few games that I watched of the Spirit. I learned she was called up to the women's national team. I believe this was the last call up. I didn't see the latest call up if they have one. But shout out Hal Hirschfeld. She's really fun to watch. I was riding on the Spirit train for a while. Can't lie. Hopped on the bandwagon. But Carlos CPA 10 on Twitter. We're going back to your regularly scheduled Tampa sports content. Plenty of stuff to talk about this Rowdies offseason. Hop in. Chat with us. Let's make it happen. Really fun stuff. And let's go get Bobby Wood. Let's run with it. We have money. We have guys that want to play for this team. There's less taxes in Florida. I'm sure that's appealing to some of these guys. Let's make it happen.
That's
go
true.
Get Bobby Wood. Yeah, let's make it happen.
Yeah, keep manifesting that, Carlos. We will see how it turns out. But if you would like to hear us manifest more things in the Tampa Bay Rowdies world, and probably Tampa Bay Sun as well, like and subscribe to our podcast. You can get the full experience on YouTube if you just want to hear us. We are also on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts. Again, anywhere you are, we are too. For a long off season coming up, but a lot to talk about, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.